When it comes to planning a funeral, we often hear that pre-planning is very important, whether it's expressing your final wishes to a loved one or actually going to the funeral home to make arrangements.
But what happens to your money when you prepay? And why is it so important to talk about death ahead of time? Delmarva Life's Brian Spires went to Holloway Funeral Home in Salisbury to find out the answers to these questions and more.
Since 1883, the Holloway family has been in the funeral business. John and Rick Holloway are the fourth generation to run the funeral home, which was started by their great-grandfather, S.J.R. Holloway.
He started in the furniture cabinet making coffins like a lot of them did back in the old days. And then they used to do all the funerals in the homes. They'd make the casket, they would take it to the house, prepare the body at the home, put them in the casket, have a viewing at home. Then they'd go to church a lot of times and have a funeral, and then on to the cemetery. Then funeral homes became the thing to do in the early 1900s.
You really have to have this desire to help people in a time of need and helping them when they're at their worst.
More than 100 years later, the business has come a long way, from cremations to monuments, and then there's the advancement in technology.
We do webcasting. That's something that's kind of new, where we can actually broadcast the funeral on the web for those that can't be here to see it.
During our visit, both Rick and John emphasized the importance of pre-planning, whether it's for you or a family member, something pre-need advisor Kathleen Morton knows all about.
Pre-planning is important because it makes sure that your wishes are honored, and it also relieves your family of a lot of stress during an already stressful time.
We have families say, Dad never talked about it. I have no idea whether he wanted to be cremated, buried, he was a veteran, did he want to be in the veteran cemetery, did he want to be buried next to Mom? We don't know because we never talked about it. Well, that creates a whole nother level of stress on the survivors that they really didn't need if Dad had just sat down and said, this is what I want to happen when I die.
With that said, Kathleen says pre-planning can be done at any age.
As long as you're established, if you know that you've lived on the Eastern Shore your entire life, this is where you're going to be, and you have a good idea of what you want, you can always go ahead and pre-plan. You may not prepay at such a young age, but things can always be adjusted or made changes to at a later time.
One option of pre-planning is prepaying, but some people are worried where their money will end up, especially when making these plans 10, 15, even 20 years before they pass.
In the state of Maryland, we're one of the few states that it's under what they call, for funeral homes, and I stress just for funeral homes, 100% trusting state, which means if you write me a check for $8,000 for the funeral, we have to place 100% of that into a trusted account that will be there in total, and it has to be an account that draws interest, and the interest that is generated on that money is how we offset the costs of inflation as prices go up down the road.
John says cemeteries fall under a different law and adds if you do pre-plan with a cemetery, that doesn't mean everything is taken care of with the funeral home.
So there's this misconception sometimes where people don't ask the questions that they need to have a funeral home involved, even though they've made their decisions at a cemetery.
It's also important to remember when making any decisions related to funeral arrangements, burial, or cremation, make sure you are working with a licensed funeral director or mortician. And when it comes to those arrangements, Holloway Funeral Home says it will work with people who are planning the services for a loved one who's passed.
That's one of the main advantages of dealing with a locally owned, family-owned funeral home, is that we don't have to go up the ladder to a corporate office to ask somebody if we can help someone. I can make that call right here when the family comes in based on their individual needs.
As John and Rick continue to move the business forward, the fifth generation is coming down the line.
It's an opportunity to help people, and that's something that I look forward to.
John's son, Jonathan Holloway, is studying business management and will then go on to mortuary school in Colorado.
Once the formal education is finished, there's a lot of trade and skills and personal touch that goes along with your formal education. So it is a tough industry to just jump right into.
And it's that family dedication that has allowed Holloway Funeral Home to provide service and tradition to the community for the last 130 years.
And here's some other advice from Holloway Funeral Home when it comes to planning a service for a loved one or perhaps your own. Number one, always ask questions. Never rush into a decision. Also, get your family involved, such as a spouse or children, especially when it comes to pre-planning. This way your family knows your final wishes. And if you would like more information on Holloway Funeral Home, including planning and legal advice when it comes to a death in the family, go to delmarvalife.com and click on the show tab.
Well, still to come on Delmarva Life, finding a forever home for the many animals on Delmarva that need one.
Brian Spyrus is in Wycomico County this afternoon with a new friend that could be yours. Brian?
Well, Lisa and Jimmy, over the next several weeks, we're going to be introducing you to cats and dogs here on Delmarva that are looking for their forever home. Today, we are at the Humane Society of Wycomico County, and when we come back, we're going to introduce you to a great group of animals.
A little bit later on is the show many have been waiting for. Season 15 of Big Brother kicks off tonight on WBOC. Host Julie Chen gives us a look inside the house where all the drama will be going down. Delmarva Life, we'll be right back.